Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the final Info Byte session of the year. I'm Ezrina, the Events Marketing Specialist at Wavelink, and today I have the pleasure to introduce Kieran, Fortinet Partner Enablement Lead for Wavelink. He will be your host and presenter for this session. Feel free to post any questions in the dedicated tab throughout the session, and Kieran will address them at the end. The floor is yours, Kieran.
Thank you so much. All right, welcome everyone. Hopefully everyone's having a lovely day this morning. We're rolling right into the Christmas and New Year holiday. So this is our last webinar. We're going to be going through FortiExplorer and having a look at not just the FortiExplorer app, but also the brand new, or relatively new anyhow, FortiExplorer Go app as well. For those that haven't met me before, hi, thank you so much for coming along. Nice to meet you through this webinar. I'm our enablement lead here at Wavelink, specifically only dealing with Fortinet. I've got a wealth of knowledge, a little bit over 5 years experience now with an SMB focused background. I've got my ECI House certification, NSE 1 through to 4, as well as my NSE 7 certifications. That litters into a whole bunch of certifications with the new program, but you know, I've got a fair wealth of knowledge. So if you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to shoot them into the questions section. Unfortunately, it's just me for today, so I won't be able to answer the questions live as we go through, but at the very end of this session, I've got time set aside for a Q&A. So I'll do my best to address any questions that you guys have right at the end. So for today, at a high level, we'll be going through what is FortiExplorer and also what is FortiExplorer Go. Hopefully I'll help answer why you would want to utilize both these apps and the supported devices through these apps. We'll then go through and we'll do a comprehensive demo of the FortiExplorer app, and also if we get time, I might lightly touch on the FortiExplorer Go app as well from terms of a demo. I'll point you in where to find some further details, and then as I said, we'll do that Q&A right at the very end. So let's jump straight in. We're going to go over what is FortiExplorer, and to give you a little bit of context around why I thought it was really important that we talk about FortiExplorer, and now more than ever, is at the moment we're seeing in today's IT infrastructure, it's becoming increasingly dispersed, and businesses of all sizes, they're struggling to keep up with their IT security teams, having them fully staffed, and that's in part partially due to the historic skill shortages that we're seeing at the moment, and the fact that cybersecurity is becoming a larger and larger industry, and there's only so many skilled laborers out there that's certified and have the skill sets for cybersecurity. So now more than ever, IT teams need powerful tools that help them do more with do less, and also, quite importantly, do whatever they need to do, however it's best for them to do it. As of March this year, the shortage of cybersecurity professionals has grown to over 3 million unfulfilled positions around the world, and we personally think that the FortiExplorer apps can be extremely useful tools to help you go through and deploy, manage, and monitor FortiGate's and the Security Fabric. Before we go any further, I did want to take a couple of seconds to talk about the fact that we will be talking about two apps today. There is the FortiExplorer app that's on the left-hand side of the screen, and then there's the FortiExplorer Go app, which is on the right-hand side of the screen there. These are two completely separate apps, but in a way they function relatively similar to each other in some aspects. So the FortiExplorer app on the left-hand side, that's Fortinet's mature and feature-rich app that allows you to deploy, manage, and monitor your FortiGates, FortiExtender, and the Security Fabric, as well as doing additional things like managing your FortiCare tickets and much more. And we'll go through and we'll talk about all the features of that app very shortly. On the right-hand side is the FortiExplorer Go. That's Fortinet's new app, and it allows for easy deployment of Bluetooth-enabled FortiGates, as well as management mixed into it. So that's a more specific app tailored for deployment and management only. My general rule of thumb is to use the FortiExplorer app where possible, But as we'll see shortly when we go through some of the depth of the FortiExplorer app, it can be in some areas quite limiting sometimes in terms of your managing and your monitoring. And whenever I hit one of those limitations, I would generally then go over to the FortiExplorer Go app and use its management through there. And again, when we talk about those two apps a little bit further on, you'll see what I mean by the limitations of the two apps. So let's focus on the FortiExplorer app first. So the FortiExplorer app is a user-friendly configuration tool that helps you to quickly and easily deploy, manage, and monitor your FortiGate, FortiExtender, and the Security Fabric from your iOS, iPadOS, macOS, Android, and tvOS device. Unfortunately, as of this webinar, the Android app hasn't been updated for quite some time. It's currently at version 1.12.0 as of this morning, and it does have quite limited functionality. Because of that, we'll be concentrating on the iOS app only for this webinar. We'll quickly touch on the tvOS app as well, but I did just want to let you know there that there is some limitations with the Android version. Also, the tvOS app or the Apple TV app isn't used for monitoring or deploying. It's only used for, it's not used for deploying and managing. It's only used for monitoring. And I'll give you some examples of where that's quite useful. So the FortiExplorer app is very rich, very feature rich, and allows you to do things like deploy, manage, and monitor your devices, manage your FortiCare tickets, but it also allows you to do firmware management, configuration management. There's an SSL VPN client built into the application itself, and there's a dead simple FortiGate cloud registration process built directly into the FortiExplorer app. And we'll go through and I'll actually demo a lot of these things for you when we get into the demo. So the main one is deploy, manage, and monitor. The app allows you to do that through a whole range of different ways that's best suited for you. You can use FortiCloud. You can use local or remote HTTP access. So you basically just give the app the IP address and the port number of the GUI, and then you can access that FortiGate device directly from the app. You can also use a USB console cable if you would like. If you have an Apple device with a lightning cable like I do, I've got an old iPhone 11, you will need a lightning to USB adapter. And then you can then plug in something like the Fortinet console cable. If you have one of the fancy new iPhone device, iPhones or iPads with the USB-C port, you can either get a generic USB-C to USB adapter and then use the Fortinet console port cable, or if you're lucky, you can get a USB-C console cable that is compatible with the iPhone and the app. I have been told that there are ones that exist. I just don't have a list to be able to share with you guys. You can also use Bluetooth to do the deployment and management. This is exclusive to iOS, unfortunately. You can scan the QR code on the device to do that deployment up into FortiCloud. That's exclusive to iOS at the moment also. But then on Android, you can actually tie into FortiSOAR, which is, I guess, a win on the Android platform. You can also set up and manage FortiExtender devices exclusively on the iOS app, and it's done through Bluetooth. So you will need a FortiExtender device that supports Bluetooth. I've got a FortiExtender 511F just over to my left over here, and I'll go through and I'll actually demo how that works and the configuration that you can do for the FortiExtender device. So when you're in and you're managing the FortiGate, you've connected to it for management purposes, you'll see that you have a lot of functionality at your disposal. Things like FortiView, logs, log and reports, and Wi-Fi and switch controller. They're fairly feature rich through this application. Just keep in mind though, not all FortiGate functionality is available through this app. This app itself was designed from the ground up to be catered to a mobile first user interface. and as such, not all features that you would typically see in the FortiGate GUI has been added into this app just yet. They're making updates all the time for the iOS app, and they're bringing new features in on a fairly regular basis. So hopefully at some point in the near future, we'll get to a much closer parity between the app and the FortiGate's graphical user interface itself. But don't be disheartened. All the major features needed for most basic SD branch or SMB deployments are available on the GUI in the app. And the great thing is, if it's not available in the GUI, you can always switch to the CLI and have that full functionality via the CLI. If I move my cursor over here, you can see, and when we jump into the demo, I'll demo this for you. You can click that button right there and you can jump straight into the CLI of that FortiGate device. Now, I just quickly put this slide in here, not to beat on the fact that the Android version hasn't been updated for a while and it's quite limited, but this just gives you an example of the limitations of the Android version compared to iOS. It does have a lot less functionality than iOS does at the moment. But if you have time and you've got an Android phone, I'd say definitely give it a download. It's free to begin with, and we'll go through the licensing tiers in a second, and just have a look and poke around and see if it has enough functionality for you to use it. Otherwise, back to iOS, it's super simple to set up and manage FortiExtender devices from the app, and as I talked about, we'll jump into a demo a little bit later. Management is very limited, and it's currently only really designed for basic setup and management in order to get the FortiExtender running. So whether you want to connect it to FortiExtender Cloud, or whether you want it to be a standalone device or connect it to a FortiGate, and then you can do some things like set up the configuration for the SIMs on the FortiExtender. And like I said, we'll jump into the demo and I'll show you all the functionality that's available currently in this version of FortiExtender. Have you ever noticed on the FortiGate, there's a nice sticker that comes with it, and it's got a whole bunch of details about how to set it up. But under Cloud Setup, right next to the Cloud key, there's actually a QR code. That QR code can actually be used in the FortiExplorer app to easily deploy a FortiGate device into FortiCloud. And we'll actually demo this a little bit later, but all you do is you go into the app, you go to the QR code scan functionality, you hover over the QR code, it will scan it, it will pull the FortiCloud key for you, and then it will, at the tap of a button, it will register this FortiGate that you've just scanned into your FortiCloud account for you. Now you can also easily manage FortiCare tickets from the palm of your hand, and if you have notifications enabled, you'll be notified when you receive an update from Fortinet. And I've actually got an active ticket at the moment with Fortinet, so when we jump into the demo, I'll show you what that looks like. You can do firmware management easily from within the app, and you've also got the ability to store firmware directly on your mobile device and push that directly to the devices. And this allows you to do things like air-gapped firmware updates directly from your mobile device, making it super easy. There's also a really robust configuration management section where you can backup, restore, manage, view, and also share your FortiGate configuration files on the go. You can even upload predefined configuration files to the app and then deploy those to as many FortiGate devices as you need. Potentially, this could help you speed up your small SD branch deployments where you aren't utilizing things like FortiManager for your zero-touch provisioning. You could have just your blank template, upload it to your phone, and then you could actually push that configuration out to your FortiGate devices when you're deploying them. It's really, really useful. I definitely recommend if you're going down the route of having a look at the app, have a look at the configuration management section. It's really quite powerful. As I said before, there's an SSL VPN client built into the app, which means that if you were using the free FortiClient VPN app for the SSL VPN functionality, you can throw that out the door because you've now got the one app that does all your Forti management deployment in your ticketing functionality, as well as your SSL VPN function built straight in, which is really cool. And it is quite powerful. You can upload your user certificates as well. So it's not like a very basic SSL VPN functionality, it's the fully fledged functionality. There are 3 tiers of licensing for the FortiExplorer app. The first tier is the free user tier, and this provides free management for up to 2 FortiGate devices. And also, if your FortiGate is licensed correctly with FortiCare, you can do that firmware updating. The next one up is your power user tier. This provides unlimited entry-level FortiGate management. There is a cost to this. You can either do a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription. And then the top tier is the pro user tier, and this provides unlimited FortiGate and VM management, as well as access to SOAR on the Android platform. This has an additional cost over the power user. It's a little bit more expensive, but same thing, you could subscribe to it on a monthly basis, or you can subscribe to it on a yearly basis. Otherwise, if you just want to manage up to those 2 devices, you can just use the free tier, and the demo that we'll be doing today for you is just the free tier as well. Moving over quickly to the Apple TV, the FortiExplorer tvOS app is useful for monitoring the security fabric, whether you're a NOC, SOC, or SD branch deployments, or you just like to have an overview of what's happening with you on your network. This is a great app that you can use for that. And it gives you access to useful insights such as your security fabric, your SD-WAN statistics, FortiAP monitoring, your security rating services, and also information about your users and devices. So I've got a couple of screenshots we can go through just as examples of the platform. So here we're looking at the security fabric overview. We can see on the left-hand side here, we've got the fabric topology. Next to that, we've got our connectors. We've then got our overview of the fabric, so we can see we don't have any access points in this screenshot, but we do have web, DDoS, switch, manager, sandbox, all those incorporated. And then of course, for a lot of these functions in here, if you actually scroll across on the Apple TV and click into them, they will give you additional information. The next one, and I like doing this, I've actually got this set up on my Apple TV. I just don't have a way to bring the Apple TV into our webinar for today, is the SD-WAN overview. This I find is really helpful. I like seeing what my SD-WAN configuration is doing, but basically it lets you show, it shows you your interface statuses. So you can see here we've got underlays and overlays for this particular example, the usage of your SD-WAN policies, and then you can also look at your rules. And on the right-hand side, when you've selected the rule, it will also give you statistics for that rule, which is really quite useful. So you can go through and interact with it and view everything that you would need to do it from your Apple TV. So you could have this projected onto a screen in your office, and you could go through and browse it quite easily. Another really useful one is the FortiAP monitoring screen. This is just the monitoring screen, so we can see a quick status update of how our access points are doing. We've got 3 access points down, but most of them are online. Sweet. We can look at the signal strength, Wi-Fi clients by band, etc. And again, we can go in and get more details for any of these specific widgets. It doesn't just stop there. You can also go through and look at it from a floor plan perspective. This is really quite cool. And of course, everything is color coordinated as per the status of that particular access point. So we can see here a couple of these ones are red. So that might give us cause to go in and have a look at, okay, what's happening for these access points? The Wi-Fi client signal strength isn't great for some of the clients on these access points. Let's go ahead and jump into the FortiExplorer app or on my laptop onto the FortiGate GUI and figure out what's going on further from there. You can also access the security rating service, which is really cool. You can go in and have a look at, okay, what aren't we meeting for some of our security rating services and how can I implement and make it better? You can then go in and have a look at some of your user information. So in this example, we're looking at compromised users. So we can get a little bit of information about the user. We've got the topology view on the right-hand side to see how they're connected into the network. And then of course, we've got our verdict view to figure out why has it been identified as compromised. Here's another view for user information, but here we're specifically looking at vulnerabilities. So again, we've got that user, we've got the overview and the summary of the vulnerabilities that they've got. We've got that topology view, and then we've also got that vulnerabilities list with the CVEs listed directly on there. So we could quickly do a quick Google search of that CVE and get further information about how we can resolve it if we needed to. Otherwise, that's really it for the tvOS app. It is quite powerful and quite useful for certain people. It may not be for everyone, but if you'd like to explore it further, please feel free to jump onto the App Store and give it a download and browse through it. Otherwise, let's jump in and have a look at the FortiExplorer Go app now. So the FortiExplorer Go app allows you to deploy Bluetooth-enabled FortiGate devices only. This means it's not as robust as the standard FortiExplorer app, because if you remember back to the FortiExplorer app, we could use console, we could just connect to it directly through HTTP, whatever you want to do. The FortiExplorer app can only use Bluetooth to do the initial deployment of them. And then in terms of its management functionality, what it's doing is essentially it's giving you a wrapped GUI HTTP session with the FortiGate, instead of it being like the FortiExplorer app, where it's a whole app built from the ground up to be GUI focused. And we'll touch on that in a little bit, and I'll give you an example of what that looks like. It is a highly focused app, so it doesn't do as much as the other FortiExplorer app. It allows you to do that deploy, manage, and monitor of your FortiGate devices. It allows you to do registration of your FortiGate devices, and I'll quickly step through in a second to show you that. And also, you can do firmware updating on this app. It's just a little bit different in how you do it compared to the standard FortiExplorer app. So unfortunately, I don't have a Bluetooth-capable FortiGate device to demo deploying a FortiGate for us. I have a brand new FortiGate 90G sitting right next to me, and I was hoping that I could get it working for this session, but at last I couldn't do it, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to quickly run through what a typical deployment will look like through the slides. So when you jump into the app, you'll have a dashboard screen where in the top right-hand side, there's a big plus button, or right in the middle of the screen at the bottom as well, there's a big old plus button. If you click that, you can start the deployment process. All you need to do then is just follow the on-screen steps that will step you through how to power up the FortiGate, and it's stepped through in a way that pretty much anyone could do it. So you can actually potentially even get like an electrician to go in and follow the steps through the app to get the FortiGate powered up and connected in and all the rest. Once it's powered up, you should then be able to see it from the drop down where the big old arrow is on the screen, and you can select the FortiGate 90G or whatever it is that's Bluetooth enabled that you'd like to set up. Once you've done that, you just need to enter in the user credentials. Of course, if this is a brand new unit, then the default, as we know, is username of admin with no password. And then just like as if you were configuring it as a standard FortiGate, it will then ask you to change that password. So they just need to step through that, change the password. Once that's been set and the FortiExplorer Go app can connect successfully into the FortiGate, you then need to set up how the FortiGate can connect to the internet. So you can go through and you can select what will be the WAN interface on the FortiGate, whether it's WAN 1, WAN 2, port 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. And then you can then choose whether you would like it to utilize DHCP, PPPoE, or if you'd like to manually assign the IP config for that WAN interface. And this is just to allow the FortiGate to connect out into the internet, because what we want to do next after that is then choose whether we would like to register the FortiGate to FortiCloud. Fortunately, I don't have a screenshot of this one, but essentially it'll just ask you, would you like to register this with FortiCloud? Now, it's important that if you would like to manage the FortiGate device through the FortiExplorer Go app, then you must enable the connection to FortiCloud. That's because, and we'll see in the next slide, I believe, or maybe the one after, management in the FortiExplorer Go app relies on the FortiGate devices being connected to FortiCloud. If they're not connected to FortiCloud, then you can't do the management. So it's quite important when you're at this step of deploying the device, if you'd like to do the management through FortiExplorer Go, do enable access to FortiCloud. Once you've done that, you've made your option, whether it's yes or no, setup is then complete. It's as simple as that. you've got one last thing that you can do if you would like to do, and that is the firmware update. You can go through and you can select exactly what firmware you would like that FortiGate to be utilizing. And then if you update it, that's great. It'll update the firmware, do a quick reboot, and then it'll have that config, that initial config about how to connect its WAN interface out to the internet. It really is as simple as that in the FortiExplorer Go. It is very, very slimmed down to make it nice and easy to do deployments. Once you've done the deployment, you can then go through and do the management. So FortiExplorer Go, essentially what it does is it serves you a web GUI of the FortiGate through FortiCloud. This means that you get the full graphical user interface of the FortiGate. It's just scaled down to fit on a mobile device. Anyone that's used the graphical user interface of the FortiGate on their mobile device before might know this, but this isn't necessarily the best experience. Some elements within the FortiGate GUI still don't scale down correctly to a mobile screen, and some features to configure can be somewhat cumbersome. And that's the big differentiator in terms of management between the FortiExplorer app and the FortiExplorer Go app. FortiExplorer Go app, it just wraps the GUI so you get full access to everything that's on the GUI, but it can be quite cumbersome because some things don't scale down, whereas the FortiExplorer app has been built up from the ground up to be mobile device GUI friendly. And you can see here, I've just flipped the image to what that can potentially look like. If we get time, which I think we will because we're right on time, I'll quickly load up my FortiExplorer app as well, and I'll give you an example of what that looks like in real time. The kicker is for the FortiExplorer app that it is completely free. So unlike the FortiExplorer Go app is completely free. So unlike the FortiExplorer app, which does have its price tiers, this app is completely free. With that, let's jump in and actually do the demo, because I think that's where you guys will probably get the most value out of today's webinar. So I've got right next to me just here is my iPhone, and I'm mirroring the screen onto our webinar just so we can see what I'm doing as we go along. And here is the homepage when you first load in the app. This is what it will look like for you. So we can see I've registered to my FortiCloud account. I'm choosing to use the global servers, but I can choose between global and Europe in my instance. There's a couple of other options that you can choose when you first sign in. And just to prove to you that everything that we're doing here is the free tier, this shows you that I am signed up for the free tier. Scrolling down, we can see at a high level, I've got 3 devices, 3 FortiGates in my fabric. I've got 1 support ticket open, which we'll quickly look at in a minute. And it's actually a P4 ticket, which is great. I've got 3 configurations backed up on my phone, and I don't have any firmwares downloaded on my phone, just because I keep running out of storage on this poor thing. Moving across to the next tab along the bottom is the tickets tab, and here is where you can monitor all of your active tickets that you currently have with FortiCare. So we can see here, I've got a current ticket with FortiCare. It's about PPPoE randomly disconnecting at my home network. Thank you very much, TPG NBN services. But we can see if I click into it, we get all the details about the ticket, its priority level, when it was created, what it was created about, and also the conversation here. So I can see here, I've got a response from Fortinet. It was at yesterday in the morning, so I really need to respond back to this. And if I click into this, I can get the full conversation. So if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see here, this is my original ticket that I sent in on the 12th. Sorry, the 11th, my bad. It's American timing on there. And I've just, that's my descriptor. So you can see all of the history that's going through. Unfortunately, you can't respond to the ticket, but it does help you at least when you get responses from Fortinet, they can pop in through the app. You can quickly read it and go, okay, perfect. When I get back to my laptop, I know exactly what I need to respond back to Fortinet with. If you tap and hold a lot of these bottom items, you can also get sub items. So under here is where we will find 2 additional cool features, and that is the FortiGate firmware and the FortiGate configurations. So we'll quickly jump into firmware. I don't have any firmware saved on my phone, like I said before, so I don't have anything in here for you. But if you did have firmware saved locally, you can actually go through and select the firmware and delete them off your phone if you ever needed to. So here we're looking at the configuration page where I've got two configurations currently set up on my device here. I've got two for the FortiGate 60F, and I've also got one for the FortiWiFi 30E. And if we jump in, we'll have a look at the FortiGate 60F one. We can see here I've got two backups done. One which is on December the 11th, which is just recently, and one which is on November the 30th. If we actually click into one of these, I'll just choose the November 30th one. We can see here, I've got a description at the very top. I've just written in PvPoE still breaks, more like PvP NOE. And we can see the details around specifically what this config is for. So we've got the FortiGate 60F, version 7.4.1, the build number, the serial of the device that this came from. And we can then also choose whether we would like to share the configuration with someone. We can view the file, and if we click view, we can actually get the text of the actual configuration file. That's great. And we can actually search at the top. So if we wanted to look for something specific, we can search through here. Or we can choose to restore it. If I just click restore, I won't go ahead with this because I don't want to take the whole webinar down from a network perspective, but I can choose which device I would like to restore it to. So even though this FortiGate configuration came from my home FortiGate 60F, because it's a configuration file for a FortiGate 60F, I can actually push it to any FortiGate device that I have that is of the same model. So I've got two currently registered to my FortiCloud account, and I could actually go through and choose whether I would like to share that with my home FortiGate 60F or whether I would like to share it with my demo FortiGate 60F. So it's really quite powerful in what you can do. And then of course, as we talked about before, you can actually import blank configuration or pre-configured configuration files if you would like to. And then if I had some loaded in here, I could then restore those to any FortiGate that I would like in my network, so long as it's for that same model of FortiGate. So it's really quite cool. And that finishes off the configuration tab. So next we'll jump in and we'll have a look at the devices page. So we can see here, because I've signed into my FortiCloud account, it will actually pull in all of my FortiGate devices that I have registered in my FortiCloud account. Now, a lot of these devices I actually have turned off and I'm not using anymore. But at the very top, we see I've got three here: my home FortiGate, my FortiWiFi 30E demo unit, and also my demo FortiGate 60F unit. For this example, we're going to jump into my home FortiGate just because it's got a little bit more to demonstrate than the rest of my stuff. Jumping in, because we have multiple ways of connecting to the FortiGate devices, we can choose the way in which we would like to actually connect. So because I've got this set up to be connected to FortiGate Cloud, I can choose whether I would like to use the FortiGate Cloud tunnel, or because I've actually set up and told the app how to connect to the device locally, I can also connect to it directly. So I'm going to click demo at 192.168.1.1. Connection is not private just because I don't have a valid SSL certificate on it. But jumping in, this is the dashboard of the FortiGate. So we can see we get all the usual information that's useful for most people: the CPU, the memory, when it was last backed up. And if you click into that, it will give you that same page of where I had the backup file. So we can choose to restore directly from here if we wanted to. We can go down and we can have a look at the status of some of our support on it. So I can see my FortiCare support ends in 2025. Sweet, I'm all good. And there's a whole bunch more functionality in here. But if we click up in the top left-hand side, the little hamburger icon, that will bring us the side navigation bar. And here's where we get to some of the other functionalities of the FortiExplorer app. So, oops, sorry, that's overwritten there. Let's go back. There we go. So first thing I want to jump into is the Security Fabric and then the security rating services. So we can actually go through and utilize pretty much everything that's part of the security rating service on the FortiGate GUI directly from within the FortiExplorer app. So we can go in here and I can see some of these things I'm not meeting the requirements for. I've passed on 259 of them, but I've got a whole bunch here that are high, critical, or medium that need to be assessed. And I can jump into one of these. I've got admin password security. I've got unmet dependencies. So if I jump into that, it can show me that, hey, this password policy should be enforced to make sure that you have secure passwords. And it also gives me all the compliance information that's relevant to this item. So I can go through and I can easily identify from my phone and from the get-go what I need to do from a security compliance standpoint to get up to speed with the best practices. Now we'll jump in, we'll have a look at FortiView. There's a whole range of different FortiViews that you can get from within here. I'm going to jump to the policies just because some of this information I don't capture in my home environment. And we'll see here that most of my traffic goes through two policies, data to WAN and Synology NAS to my WAN. If we jump in and we have a look at data to WAN, it will give us some information about what's happening here. So I've got a whole bunch of applications detected. I've got 6.1 megabits per second of current bandwidth, 104 sessions, fantastic. And if I scroll across, I can get additional information. So here we're actually looking at the sources of information. So most of the traffic right now is coming from my work laptop, and that's probably because we're doing the webinar. And then of course I've got my iPhone, my Mac, Book Pro, and a whole bunch of other stuff in here. And if we actually click into that device, again, we can get additional information about it. So we can see the applications detected, Microsoft Office Online, a couple of other things. There's 46 sessions specifically for this device. Don't mind the not found icon that pops up every now and again. I'm running a beta version of iOS, which doesn't quite play well with the app at the moment. If you were running this on a normal iPhone with normal software, you would be fine. So there's a whole bunch of information you get through here. And you can scroll through to get the other views like destinations, applications. I'm not capturing application information, so this is blank for me. So you can drill down and you can go through and you can be as specific as you would like to be. And of course, there's different views that you can choose from FortiView, so that's quite powerful. Next one is your network, and then we'll go into interfaces. And you can go through and just like you would normally do on the FortiGate GUI, you can go in and edit your interfaces. So if we just jump in and have a look at maybe my DMZ network, we can see that I've set this up as a VLAN. VLAN ID is number 2. Its role is DMZ, and I've got device detection on. I don't have DHCP set up, so if I go into DHCP, we can see that it's disabled. But we can actually go in here and we can enable and set up a whole range of functionality just as you would doing it from within the FortiGate GUI. And like I said, a lot of the functionality that you would need on a daily basis is within the app. And in the top right-hand side, we can actually do some diagnostics. We can do a ping and we can do a trace route directly from that interface. And the great thing is because I've connected in this session specifically directly to the FortiGate, a lot of the functionality that we're doing here is absolutely lightning quick because we're not proxying this through a cloud connection. So if I did a ping trace, it would come back, really, really quickly. So there's a lot of stuff in there that you can go through and customize from an interface perspective that we'd normally need to do on a daily basis. We've also got SD-WAN functionalities built in, so I can have a look at my SD-WAN zones. So here at home, I've got 2 WAN interfaces and also a FortiExtender connected into a SD-WAN zone, which is my virtual WAN link. And I can have a look at my bandwidth, my volume, and my sessions, just as you normally would on the FortiGate. And I can also jump in and configure the settings for the individual interfaces if I ever needed to. And then I can also add interfaces. You can go through and all the typical things that you would need to do from an SD-WAN perspective, you can pretty much do from within the app. And that includes going through and setting up your rules. You can see I've got a couple of rules in here, and I can go in and I can configure them and set them up the best way that's responsible for the network. So it is very, very feature rich, specifically for SD-WAN. Also, it goes down to looking at your performance SLAs too. So I've got one set up for default DNS. You need to click on the rule first to get the graph. But once you've done that, I can see here Packet loss is extremely good across my WAN interface, fantastic. If I go to latency, okay, latency, it's not too bad, roughly 3.6, spiked up to nearly 5 milliseconds. That's not too bad. So you can get all the information that you would typically need to get when you're troubleshooting and looking at what's happening with your SD-WAN from within the app. Just like everything, you can go in and you can add additional SLAs if you would like to. Like I said, it's really feature rich. And then of course, static routes if you need to set those up. Next thing I like to go through is the systems page. Again, you've got that configuration just as we saw before. You can do backups, you can import, you can restore, you can share, whatever you would like to do. But more importantly, firmware. You can do the firmware updates from within here. So I don't have any firmware stored locally on my phone, but that's okay, you don't need to. Right now, it defaults to the new page. Because I'm running the latest version of FortiOS, there's no newer builds that we can go to. But if we go across to the available page, we can see here all the available firmware that the FortiGate can directly download from FortiGuard services to restore its firmware to. And it's very comprehensive. It goes all the way back to, for this FortiGate 60F, all the way back to 6.0.8. Now, I would definitely not recommend going back to 6.0.8, especially from 7.4.0. But the availability for you to do that functionality is here. And like I said, you can download these firmwares directly to your phone and you can push them directly from your phone. It's really, really robust. Next, we want to have a look at is the policy and objects. We'll jump in and have a look at the policies first. So in here, you've got your firewall policies exactly like you would have them on the FortiGate, just a little bit condensed to make it easier to read on the phone. I got a whole bunch of policies. Most of these I don't use anymore, so I should probably go through and clear a lot of these out. But I can choose, I can go through, I can do a policy lookup if I wanted to see, okay, this certain traffic coming through, what would it normally hit? I can filter at the very top. So maybe I want to filter it by the active sessions, and then voila. My most active session firewall is Synology NAS to my WAN. But you can also go through and you can create your firewall policies directly from within the app. And you can go through and set your typical stuff like incoming interface, your destination, whether you would like to accept and deny it, your proxying mode, whether you want full proxy mode, NAT, and then all of your security profiles directly from within the app. So it is very fully feature rich. And if we jump into one of the ones I've currently got set up, like the Synology NAS to WAN, we can have a look at all the details about how it was set up, what security profiles I'm doing. More importantly, if we go back to the policies page and we click the active sessions, we'll get some analytics about the sessions that are running through that particular firewall policy. So we can see here, I've got 119 active sessions, fantastic, when it was last used, when it was first used, and also how the FortiGate is processing it in terms of, is it doing it through software, is it doing it through nTurbo, or is it doing it through an ASIC? So we can see here a lot of the processing that I'm doing, in fact, all of the process I'm doing for this type of traffic is done within software. So that's policies in a nutshell, really, really useful. And then of course you can go through and create things like virtual IPs and monitor them and create schedules and things like that. Under user and device, the one thing I really wanted to touch on in here is device inventory. It will give you a list of all of the devices that you have on your network and give you that inventory list. Just as an example, if I scroll down, I might have to refresh it just quickly. Okay, it's not going to pull it through live, but that's okay. I think whatever glitch caused the audio to not work correctly before might be impacting the demo, but that's fine. We can see here that I would normally have my iPad connected. It's identified it as an iPad, which is a tablet, fantastic. And it's even identified the fact that it is all the way down to being the iPad Air model, which is fantastic. And then you can go through and you can dig through detail. You can have a look at it in terms of the FortiView and get really quite particular with finding all the information about it. And that's across all of the devices that have been identified on your network. So we can see here my iPhone, I can jump into that. Again, it's identified as an Apple iPhone, specifically, the iPhone model. So that's really quite powerful. And I
Personally, I use that quite a fair bit, especially when you have people coming in and out of your network and you want to have a look at what's connected into your network and do some sort of troubleshooting from that. The second last thing I like to look at is the Wi-Fi and switch controller. In here, there's two main things. There's the access point controlling. So if we jump into the FortiAP overview, we can see I've got 2 access points, both are connected, everything's fine, fantastic. And then if we click into one of these access points, we get that detailed analysis of the access points. We can see here my study access point, it's a 431G. It's been up for 2 days. It's running version 7.4.1, and its health is all nice and healthy. And then if I keep scrolling down, I can do some actions like blink the LEDs, reboot it. I can even kick it off and deauthorize it if I wanted to. And then scrolling down even further, I can go through and I can configure the access point specifically. I can have a look at the clients that are currently connected. Again, it's wigged out a little bit, unfortunately, because of the issue that we were having. We can do monitoring, but also we can have a look at where that access point is if we've uploaded our maps. Now, this obviously isn't my house. This is the map of what a car guy's unit would look like if he had the choice. But we can just see here, that's the access point on a map. And if we go back, we can then also just have a look at the Wi-Fi map to begin with. So we can see here, when it comes through, that there's 2 devices I've got currently connected, one up in the top right, one on the bottom left. And of course, you can click on the access point to bring back up that same detailed page as we had before. You can then go through and configure your FortiAP profiles. I've got a couple set up, and you can go in, you can customize all the things that you would typically customize from the FortiGate GUI about your radio configuration, your Bluetooth settings, all that additional, all the traditional stuff that you could do from an AP perspective. You can also go through and manage your FortiSwitches. Unfortunately, I don't have any switches to show you this functionality, but hopefully the access point side gives you an idea of the kind of functionality that you can get from within the app as well. So you can manage both access points and both switches from here. And then of course, you've got your traditional logging and reporting. So all of your event types, you can go in and have a look at your logs for. And also there's some monitoring in here. Now it's not fully fledged for the monitoring, unfortunately, but all the major things that you would need to monitor are in here, like your DHCP, your routing, your SSL VPN, your IPsec, your rogue access points, all the typical stuff that you would need. At the very top, we've got 2 options up here. We've got the settings icon. This just allows you to do things like change password, reboot, or shut it down if you would like to. And then to its left is that CLI option. So we can see here, we're now connected directly into the CLI of the FortiGate. So we can do like get sys info and tab that. Oh, no. Sorry, I can't touch that. Status info. And then voila, there we go. We've got that CLI command back. And we can go in and we can actually copy text out of here. So I can click that share button and then I can share it out to maybe a colleague of mine to help them try and troubleshoot or maybe go and configure things through CLI. So it's really quite powerful. That's about it from a management perspective. So we'll back out of that really quickly. And then we'll jump into, if I hold my finger on that icon, we've got a couple of other options in here. First one is connect through the USB. So if you were doing a console cable from your phone to the FortiGate, that's how you would access it. You can scan the QR code, and we talked about this earlier. If I bring this up, you can see my lovely little office space. This is my FortiGate 90G with that cloud key icon on it. If I move in nice and close, it's pulled that cloud key directly off that QR code for me. And all it would take for me to register this device is to click register. And then I can choose where I would like to register it to. So I might click FortiGate Cloud. There we go, voila. It's as simple as that. And that FortiGate is now registered into FortiGate Cloud. I can cancel out of that. And we can see already, just there, right there, we've got that FortiGate registered. And in a little bit, I don't have any WAN connections connected to it, but if I did have a WAN connection into it, we would actually see it come up and go live. We can add a device via HTTPS. We can connect via FortiCloud. That option is a little bit I don't know why it's there, because you could just use the main page for that. But also you can click add a FortiExtender, and this is where we can do that FortiExtender management from. So if I quickly enable Bluetooth on my FortiExtender, we'll jump in and we'll quickly touch on what that looks like. So when you jump into the page, it will start scanning for FortiExtenders that are available for Bluetooth. On your FortiExtender, you do need to press the Bluetooth button for about 3 to 5 seconds to enable it. But once you've done that, it should pop up. You can go in here. I've already set the password for this FortiExtender, so it'll auto log me in. But once you're in, you get all your sort of basic statistics for that device. So I can go in, I can have a look. Currently, it's connected to Telstra, 58% signal strength, fantastic. I can change that password if I needed to, and I can go into my network settings, and I can choose whether I want this to be cloud managed, FortiGate managed, or whether I want it to be a standalone local device. And I can then configure any DHCP settings on the FortiExtender to allow me to connect something like my laptop into it to get onto the internet. And then also the other thing you can configure are your cellular settings. So if I jump in here, I can choose my preferred carrier if I needed to manually configure that. Generally these days though, we can leave it to the standard and it will auto-figure the carrier for each SIM card in it. I can go in and configure the SIM card specifically, whether they've got PIN codes and what my default SIM should be. And then I can go in and also configure my plan details, whether there's an APN, which specific carrier, any authentication that they have, etc. All of the basic stuff that you would need to get in order to get the FortiExtender up and running. It's really all that this functionality provides at the moment. Hopefully they expand on this in the future, but at least this functionality is there and it does work really well. So I'll disconnect from that FortiExtender. One thing to keep in mind is when you disconnect from a device using Bluetooth, it will actually disable Bluetooth on that device. So on my FortiExtender over here on my left-hand side, it's actually disabled the Bluetooth for me. So I don't have to worry about someone rogue coming in and connecting to it. Otherwise, there's only one last thing in here that I would like to touch on, and that's the fact that you can enable Face ID to actually use the app. So if I close this app and I reopened it, I'd need to scan my face in order to actually get access to the app. So just another level of security. Otherwise, that's it for the FortiExplorer app. I've got a couple minutes left, so I'll quickly open up the FortiExplorer Go app. If it would like to work for me. No, okay, so my FortiExplorer Go app has signed me for some reason, but that's okay. I might do another webinar just quickly at a later point to quickly go through the Explorer Go app. But that's about it from the perspective of the FortiExplorer apps. So information for these apps is a little bit sparse at the moment, unfortunately. If you wanted to get some written details and documentation about the FortiExplorer app, the fully fledged app, then if you go to the FortiGate administration guide, and then under Getting Started, there's a section called Using FortiExplorer Go and FortiExplorer. There's a couple of items in there that go through and explain how you connect using FortiExplorer to a FortiGate and a couple of other things like deployment and things like that. FortiExplorer Go is a little bit better documented. It actually has its own section within the Fortinet documentations page and its own separate user guide. But because the functionality of FortiExplorer Go is quite limited at the moment, there's only like 6 or 7 pages in there. But it's always useful to go through, and if you're wanting to use that app, I definitely recommend going through and reading through all the documentation that's available. So the first question we've got is, are there any reasons you know as to why the Android app is not updated more regularly? I wish I had an answer for this. I have reached out to Fortinet support in the past to figure out why that is so, because I actually wanted to make the change from iOS to Android, and that was one of the apps that I use a lot on iOS. And unfortunately, they didn't give me a solid answer as to why it's not updated more regularly. But I'm hoping if enough of us can annoy them enough, they might put some development back into that application. Another question is, will responding to Fortinet support be available in the future? Again, I'm not quite sure. I have asked them in the past about that because that would help speed up my my use of the FortiExplorer app and make it a little bit easier. Unfortunately, no, I'm not sure when that would come through, and I couldn't get a solid answer out of them either. Question about, is this talking directly to FortiGate or to cloud and then back again? So it depends on, in the FortiExplorer app, it depends on how you would like to connect. So you have the option of using FortiCloud, or the option that I actually did all of that demo on was connecting directly to the FortiGate using its IP address. So it's really up to you what you would like to choose. I personally prefer to connect directly to the FortiGate if I have access to do that. It just means it's a little bit snappier because you're not sending traffic and proxying it through FortiCloud, but you can use the FortiCloud services if that's more convenient to you. I think that's all the questions that we did have. I'll go through the questions at the end of the webinar just in case I've missed anything. But thank you guys so much for coming along. I hope you got a lot out of it. I do apologize about the little technical difficulties that we had, but hopefully, you know, we didn't lose too many of you guys through the session. With that, I'll hand it back to Ezrina just to say goodbye. I hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas and New Year, and hopefully we'll see you all on the other side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kieran, and thank you everyone for joining. Wishing you all a joyous holiday, and we will see you in 2024. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kieran.